would describe myself as a test-infected developer. That is, I hate it when I can't test drive my code in some way. At this conference, I have two different presentations. I'm talking about how can we try to understand what we actually should do. And so I'm going to talk about a development method that you could call it a development method. And I'm also going to talk about the necessity of understanding or make the test code easy to understand and read. So, welcome everyone. Some of you saw the trailer. I did as well, first time. It was kind of a shock to be interviewed at the airport. I didn't expect that. So, this presentation is something I call Selenium and the 4 rules of simple design. I'm Thomas. I'm a test-infected developer. And there are quite a lot of people here. Who in here would describe yourself as a tester? So that's half of the audience. A developer? That's a few. And the rest of you are something else, I guess. Okay. Everyone is more than welcome, though. Last conference I was at, they asked, do you do anything else than development? Yes, I do. I play the trombone. That's me in the middle. I think I played the melody in something called Jump for Joy. But back to work. The 4 rules of simple design. So the first question is, which rules are we talking about and why do they actually matter? These rules, 4 of them, are test passes. That's very important. If the test doesn't pass, well, we have a problem. It's very important that we understand what we're supposed to do. So express intent or clarity if you want, making stuff easy to understand. Avoiding duplication. In many cases, I think that's a given, but for some people, it's obviously not a given, so it's very important, no duplication. And then finally, small, whatever that happens to mean. These were introduced by a guy called Kent Beck in a book called Extreme Programming. It's written in 1999. Who in here has heard of Kent Beck? 1. Right. That was really an interesting question I asked at another conference where the keynote, like an hour before, talked about Kent Beck and some stuff he did. And there were 3 people in the audience who had heard the name Kent Beck. So either they weren't listening or they weren't at the keynote. I don't know which. Anyhow, this is a person who has done a lot of thinking. He's the father of extreme programming, or at least he's part of creating it, and so forth. So, what does these 4 rules say then? Well, test passes. The implication of this is there has to be tests. And I'm pretty sure that when Kent wrote this, he was thinking about unit tests. And it's still uncommon that people use unit tests. The sound is strange. Yeah, someone's fixing it. So there must be tests. And I'm talking about Selenium here, a testing tool. Do we have tests for the tests? Who is guarding the guard? Well, sometimes we do have to have tests for the tests. And especially when we talk about complicated things like time zones, daylight saving, stuff like that. I didn't really think about this until a friend of mine told me why he spent 3 weeks in a conference room in London. It turned out that someone had screwed up daylight saving time and they hadn't tested it properly. So one of the larger mobile operators weren't able to invoice for like a couple of weeks. That was bad from their perspective. And someone had screwed up the testing. So we need tests for testing stuff. And time is really, really hard to test. Express intent. Well, we want it to be really, really clear what you want to do. I don't really care how you do it in many cases, but I'm really interested in what you want to do, and perhaps even why. This one doesn't tell me anything. It's probably going to do something. Anyone seen code like this before? Okay, it's just me. No, a few guys over there. It happens that you see something like this. I don't know what this one will do. Hopefully nothing bad, but I don't know. Looking at the implementation. Oh, I got a screen there. We add something and we subtract something. Is it clear what it does? Maybe, maybe not. But it would be really easy just to name it a little bit better. Transfer funds. Okay, so we're talking about some kind of transferring here. We have accounts. Someone is paying and someone is receiving money. Payee and payer. We have some kind of amount. Oh, all of a sudden it made a lot better sense, much better sense. And this is a case or an example of expressing intent. Telling people what you're going to do, not just do something randomly. Jason Gorman, a guy in London, wrote a blog post a while back. Don't know how long time back it was, a couple of years ago, I would guess. The best kind of code clearly tells the story of what the code does. And this is so important. All right, the third rule, no duplication. It's very easy to say that you shouldn't copy and paste code. That's very easy to detect as well. There are tools that can help us with doing that. It's very easy to find similar pattern in an abstract syntax tree. So that's easy. It's harder to find duplicated concepts. And they are even more dangerous. So it's easy to find code that has been copy and pasted, but duplicate concepts, hard. When you find them, do whatever you can to remove them, if you can. Should we avoid duplication at all costs? Well, the answer is, it depends. I'm a consultant and contractor, so that's the consultant answer. It depends. And it does. It's obvious to me, at least, that the test passes and we understand what we should do is way more important. And if you're in doubt, you have found some duplication, but you don't really know, should you work on it or not? Well, think of something called the rule of 3. When you find it the third time, remove it. And if you're interested, a friend of mine, Addy, wrote a blog post about this as well, the rule of 3. So removing duplication, absolutely, but perhaps not all the time. And the last rule, small. What is it? Well, again, it depends on the context. Sometimes small could be, I don't know, like the method we saw earlier, 2 lines of code, 4 lines in total. One thing that you can think of is, do you have a single responsibility or not? Are you doing one thing or many things? If you're doing many things, it's probably too large. Level of abstraction. Do you have more than one level of abstraction? Yes or no? If you have it, then you probably have something that should be refactored, and perhaps there's 2 methods waiting to happen. These 4 rules, you can't just pass them once and be happy. You have to apply them, and you should iterate over them over and over and over again. And all of a sudden, you may find that you don't find anything new to change. Everything is clear, there's no duplication, and it's small. Then you're done. And the test, they have always been passing, so that was a given. But it turns out that if you fix a name, you might find some stuff, more duplication. Removing that may reveal other things, and so forth. And it also turns out that if you are thinking about this, clear intent and no duplication, doesn't really matter which order you do it, as long as you do it, because the end result will be the same. At least if we talk to J.B. Reinsberg about it. And if you don't know who this person is, look it up. He has a lot of good things to say. Right. and this is boring, at least to me. So this is a hands-on session in the sense that I'm going to do some writing of some code. Or actually, I'm going to start from code sample that looks like this. So this is pretty much a standard Java project. If you're a developer, you might recognize yourself. If you're not, it doesn't matter. And this is an example of a test case. And it's so long that it doesn't even fit my screen. And I'm not sure if you can read it in the back or not. To be able to see everything, I have to shrink it. Something like this. So my first question is, how many in here has seen code like this? You're probably an honest crowd, or very unlucky, or both. When I did this a couple of weeks in Berlin, there were like 3 persons saying they had seen it. I didn't believe them. The first thing I'm going to do is see, does the test pass? Does this test pass? And the way to do that is to run this method. And let's hope that the network is with us and stuff works. Because I am relying on running Selenium in this case. And it took 12 seconds when I did this before the presentation. So let's hope it goes fast. Not that fast. Okay. So we're done. The test actually passed. Did anyone see what it did? I looked up Amazon, I searched for a book, I placed it in a shopping bag, and then I stopped. If we zoom in on this a little bit, and let's see, what does this one say? The first thing I notice is that the method here, method name, is almost impossible to read, and it lies. 2 bad things. So the first thing I'm going to do is to rename it, and I'm going to rename it to something that actually tells what it does. And this one, it will put something called working active effective with legacy code in shopping bag. Something like this. The Java developers are now hating me because I use snake casing and not camel casing. Why do I do that? Well, it hurts my eye to see something this long made up of, it's a sentence, but I can't read it. This one is easier to read. I would prefer not to have the underscores, but I can read this. So therefore, I tend to do this in my test code. I don't do it in my production code. I try to keep the names short there, but this one, I'd like to see a sentence that actually tells me what this one is supposed to do. If it does this or not, that's almost irrelevant. This is the intent. This is what I'm aiming for. Right. So first thing I'm going to do after this is to commit this. This code will be available on GitHub afterwards. I don't know how long where I will end up, but the code I write now will be available for you to look at afterwards. So the first one is express intent. Let the name describe what the method does. And it is important to spell correctly, so I'll change this to describe instead. Oops, sorry. So there we go. I did a small change, and I don't expect this to break the tests. In a production setting, if I didn't do this at the presentation, I would probably run the test now, just to make sure I didn't screw anything up. The next thing I'm looking for is, are there any duplication here? And there is one that I gonna extract, although it's not, I don't see it 3 times, I see it 2 times. But I'm gonna extract this search string because it is used in 2 places. And it's important that we have the same string here. So I'm searching for something. This method will type into a text box in Selenium. And this one I will use it to search through a list of elements. Did I find the correct thing or not? So it's important that they actually are the same. So I'm going to extract this one to a variable, all occurrences, 2 of them, yes, please. And what should I call it? I'll call it search string, like that. And that's it. That's what I'm going to do now. I'm not going to do more than that. I'm going to commit this. And I'm going to say duplication. Extracted search string. And some people think that these baby steps, they are ridiculous. It takes so long time. But you know what? It takes time to fix something when you don't know what you broke as well. So I prefer taking baby steps, although some people think that I'm very slow. I got the best compliment once. Someone was thinking, should we assign this thing to Thomas or another guy? If we assign it to this other guy, it will be done in 2 hours, and we will get a null pointer exception the first thing we get. If it gives it to Thomas, it will take 2 days, but it will work. I got the job. I'm proud of that. So taking time, I think that's valuable. The start of this test method doesn't have anything to do with putting something in a shopping bag. This is something that fits way better in something that can be reused. So I'm going to extract this thing to a method that I call setup, and that I will run before the test, because this is infrastructure more than anything else. Before class, before. Let's use that one. What I call this method doesn't really matter. The convention in JUnit, or at least in the old version of JUnit, was to call it setup. So I'm going to call it setup. Right. Now we have a problem because driver can't be found. So what I will do, I will declare driver here as a private variable that will be set like this, like this, and that's it. So this one made it a bit smaller. I removed an what do we call that? Incidental detail, something that is not too important. It is important, but not in the context of understanding what this test actually does. So I'll call this one small, extracted driver setup. Like this. And it's important that the test passes, so I'm going to build this, and this is a Gradle project for anyone who knows what that is, and if you don't, it doesn't matter, it's a build tool. Now I'm going to build this, and this is the way it would be. No, I'm going to use build instead, not test. This is the way it would be executed on your build server. This is what Jenkins or TeamCity or whatever you have would do. Whoa, they still passed. What a luck. I wasn't really surprised because I didn't get any compilation error or anything like that. But anyone, a fool can get anything to compile. Not everyone can get a thing to work. So compiling, that's not enough. Right, let's go back to the code and see if there is anything else we can do. Yeah, there's one thing that I am very upset is perhaps the wrong word. I don't like the fact that the Selenium documentation talks about driver everywhere, because it's not a driver. It's an abstraction. It's an abstraction for a browser. So I want to call this browser, because that's what it is. It's nothing, not a driver. Maybe it is in a technical sense, but who cares? The abstraction here is driver. And now my development environment suggests that I should rename this one as well, which would be foolish to do because that would be give me a problem. So I'm going to skip that and fix the rest of them. Let's see what happened now. So I renamed it browser, and can't find my cursor. There we are. Browser. So it was renamed here, here, here. It was not renamed there. Good. Good. So all of a sudden, we're talking about the browser in this case, and not the driver. That makes much more sense to me. So I'll commit this, and we're talking about express intent. Call the browser abstraction browser. Call the browser. Yep, that's hopefully correct. Okay. The next one I'm going to do is something that can be either express intent or because it's small. But this one, browser quit, doesn't have anything to do with putting stuff in a shopping bag. This is just something I have to do. So therefore, I'm going to extract that as well. And I want it to run after my test. And actually, I want it to run after each test. So therefore, I'm going to put it in a method that I annotate with after, like this. And again, it doesn't matter what I call the method. So I call it tear down. And if you find code like this and that's not a really good name, this one is even misspelled, fix it. What am I supposed to do here? Well, the only thing I'm going to do there is to close the browser. Small things, small steps, headed in a direction. I know where I want to be. I want to end up somewhere where I have 2 or 3 lines in this test method. And I know I can get there, but it will take time. So I claim that this is express intent, but it could also be small. And hide the details for shutting down the browser. We are mixing a lot of concepts here. We're at least mixing 2 concepts. We're mixing the concepts of navigation on a web page with verification, this assert. And in a test, I'd like not to have to think about stuff like navigation on a web page, because that's uninteresting. I'd like to think about what is this test supposed to do. So I'd like to extract something, and I'm aiming for a helper, maybe a page object, if you know what that is. If you don't know what it is, it doesn't matter. Something that will hide the details, all the nasty details about moving around on a web page, which is totally uninteresting when you want to verify that we actually have something that works for putting something in a shopping bag. To do that, that would be a really large step. So I'm going to divide it into a few smaller steps. And the first one is about searching for the product. And if I extract, let's see. Yeah. If I extract, say, this part to something that I call search, then I can remove some stuff about navigation. This is not the end goal, but it's a step in a direction, and hopefully a good direction. So I'm going to extract this one, and I'm going to call it I'm going to call it search product. Like that. Okay. So we have something that we can delegate and just trust this works. If it doesn't work, we can see if we have a problem here. But we don't have to understand all of this test method. We know that we're searching for a product, and that's it. And I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I find it complicated and hard to understand complicated things. When it's too large, I don't get it. I have to work hard on it. So I really want to break things up in smaller parts that are easier to understand. Everything else is just a waste of my time. So in this case, I'm going to call it small, and I extracted searching for product, like this. The next thing that actually happens is that the book in this case is located. This nasty for loop, and by the way, it is highly illegal to have for loops in a test, because that's repetition. And a test should be one way through. There should be no branching, as in if statements, and there should be no repetition, unless you have to, but you don't, almost always. So this is usually something I describe as illegal, and I don't want to see it. But this one is a great way to extract, and I'm actually gonna extract a little bit more. So this is a method waiting to happen, and I want to call it locate product. Locate product. I think I spell it correctly. Okay. And all of a sudden, we can actually see the entire test case at the same time. That's a new one. So I'm going to commit this one, and my commit message will be small, extracted locating the book from the search result. Okay. I think I have like 9 minutes left. I won't be able to finish what I'm actually aiming for because I will run out of time, but it doesn't really matter. I think that you are getting the point here that we're trying to do small things and many times over. The last thing I'm confident that I will be able to do is to add stuff to the shopping bag. It's dark here. Right. So this is something that is actually adding stuff to the shopping bag. And therefore, I can extract that. Add book to shopping bag. Okay. So this is what we're doing. We're searching, we're locating, and we are adding it to a shopping bag. Add product to shopping bag. There we go. All right. I'm doing with time. Yep. So the last thing I think I might have. No, we'll see. We'll see. This one is asserting that that the book actually has ended up in the shopping bag. But I'm not really impressed by this stuff. Get attribute, blah 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 blah. Couldn't care less. So I'm going to extract my own assertion, and I'm going to call it assert that shopping bag contains book, like this. And what is the motivation here? Express intent. I could also use the motivation, I want it to be smaller. But it doesn't really matter, as long as we end up with something that is easy to understand and easy to maintain. Extracted, asserting the book. Asserting that the book is in the shopping bag, like this. Okay. I still have time. I'm gonna extract this ugly thing, which is the last thing that actually has anything to do with Selenium in the test. So I'm gonna extract this, and I'm gonna move weight to an instance variable. But let's start with actually creating it. So I'll copy this line, and then I'm declaring it as a private variable, like this. And you may notice, or may not notice, that I'm formatting the code all the time. Very important that it is formatted properly. And well, this works well. Okay, so I extracted this one. This allows me to remove it from the call. Here in line 43, for example, I'm using it in the method call. I can remove this one. I can remove this one, and I can remove this one. Oh, it doesn't compile. Okay, I'll fix that. I don't need this one anymore. I can use the instance variable. Locating product. I don't need it here either. I can use the instance variable. And finally, I don't need it here either. So there we go. And all of a sudden, we have a test that doesn't really know about Selenium. We have helpers that knows about Selenium, but this test doesn't know anything about Selenium. So the final thing I'm going to commit is express intent, extracted wait and hide waiting for the test. Waiting for a browser is not important in a test. It is important when you navigate, but for the test, nope. Now the million-dollar question is, does this still work? I hope so. We'll try. Because as you know, it is important that the test always passes. And we're transferring data from images at Amazon. Yep, it is a risk to do a thing like this. That is depending on the network. But it was fast. Last time I executed, then it was 19 seconds. Okay, let's see if it passes or not. I'll have to wrap up this presentation though. And now I lost my clicker. There it is. So, these are the 4 rules. They are really important. They are seemingly very simple. I claim that they are not. There's a difference between simple and easy, and they are simple, but it's not easy to follow them. So what did I do? I changed names, I extracted setup, more names, reduced size. I did a lot of things. But the thing here is you do this over and over and over and over again. This is not a thing you do once. You do it again. And if it takes an hour or 2 hours, well, who cares? You have plenty of time because your system will probably live for a long time. I don't have that image today, but there is calculation. If you do something like so it takes 5 minutes a day, you do it 50 times a day, you have 9 months to remove this manual thing before it costs time in a project that is 5 years old. This is not a silver bullet. Snake oil is not sold here. It's sold somewhere else. But it can make your life better. This rule, the Boy Scout rule that Bob Martin has suggested, always applies. So if you write code, remember this one. Always leave the code in better shape than you found it. This might be one of the smartest things that person has said. He has said a lot of other things that is less clever. This example is available on GitHub. I haven't pushed my commits yet, but I will do that within a few minutes. And I'd like to say thank you to my good friend Johan, who helped me with some of this stuff I'm preparing. I'm Thomas. I have 33 seconds left, and I've been talking about Selenium and the 4 rules of simple design.